Have you gone to Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal, visited White Rock, or flown out of YVR? Do you live in Richmond, Delta, Surrey, or anywhere south of the Fraser? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then chances are you've traveled through the George Massey Tunnel, a historic 4-lane tunnel that opened over 65 years ago, connecting Delta to Richmond via Highway 99. The George Massey Tunnel has served Metro Vancouver nicely over these past 65 years, but it's at its limit. Every weekday, rush hour slows this crossing to a halt, and people have been demanding change for years. Well, it's time. The region is in the midst of an incredible mega project to replace the George Massey Tunnel, and it's called the Fraser River Tunnel Project. Hi, my name is Arden English, and I answered yes to one of those questions in the intro. As someone who grew up south of the Fraser, I've had an abundance of experiences with the George Massey Tunnel. Its old orangey yellow sodium lights hold a special place in my heart as I would hold my breath going from one end to the other. But I remember hearing talks of its replacement since back when I was in elementary school, and after all this time, it's finally almost here. The idea is to create a brand new 8-lane tunnel to replace the aging 4-lane tunnel, alongside providing significant improvements to walking, cycling, and public transit, all by the year 2030. But before we get into that, let's take a look at how we got here. Talks about a physical connection between Ladner and Richmond date back to 1927, when the provincial government authorized the Fraser River Bridge Company to build a toll bridge between Ladner and what was then referred to as Lulu Island. This wasn't exactly a popular decision for many. While evidently those living nearby loved the idea, there weren't really too many people there to begin with. As such, the residents of the city of New Westminster fought against the idea, stating that their leg of the Fraser River was a better location for its first physical crossing. But the Ladner Bridge proposal pushed forward, with the site at Dease Island being chosen as the best location. Despite the apparent progress, New Westminster was still firmly against it, and a change in provincial government was all it took to kill the project. This is a recurring theme in this story. The location of the bridge was changed, and a new plan for a New Westminster Bridge was born. That became what we now know as the Patella Bridge, which is currently undergoing a replacement project of its own. The Ladner Bridge project was shelved, and the connection continued to be served by a ferry until in 1947, when Ladner resident and local Delta MLA George Massey came forward with a plan for a tunnel instead of a bridge. Skip ahead a few years, and in 1956 the Dease Island Tunnel project was announced at a projected cost of $15 to $17 million. Now, that may sound cheap, but I assure you, it hurts even more with an inflation calculator. Construction started the following year, and the way this tunnel was built is nothing short of spectacular. A dry dock was created right next to the construction site where the 6 concrete tunnel segments were created. Upon completion, each segment was floated out and sunk into position. It's worth noting that this dry dock is now the BC Ferries Fleet Maintenance Unit you can see at the northern end of the tunnel. And that was it. The tunnel officially opened on May 23, 1959 by Queen Elizabeth II at a final price of $25 million. Originally, the tunnel went by the name of the Dease Island Tunnel, but in 1969 it was renamed after George Massey due to its significance to the project. But the tunnel was ultimately a success. There was finally a second crossing of the Fraser, and the third was soon to come. Traffic was running smoothly. Until it wasn't. Congestion creeped up faster than anticipated, and by the late 70s, the tunnel was already a notorious point of conflict. To mitigate this, a counterflow system was installed in 1981. You can see it in action here. At peak hours, one of the lanes switches directions to better serve the flow of traffic, meaning the tunnel effectively has 3 northbound lanes in the mornings and 3 southbound lanes in the afternoon. It's an unusual system, but it's certainly a unique feature of the George Massey. Well, that's all fun and good, but why are we replacing this thing? Well, interestingly enough, the original plan wasn't to replace it at all. Originally, the idea was just to seismically retrofit the existing tunnel, which was easily completed by 2006, but some saw a different opportunity. In 2012, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure began public consultation on a formal replacement of the aging tunnel. And you'll never guess what it was. A bridge! Yeah, bet you didn't see that one coming. At an estimated price of $3.5 billion, this gargantuan 3-kilometer-long, 57-meter-high bridge was the talk of the town. It would be a staggering 10 lanes wide and feature a large multi-use pathway for those who chose to walk or bike over the crossing to avoid paying the toll. Tolls were common practice at the time, with the Portman and Golden Ears bridges being tolled as well. Another similarity to the Portman Bridge can be found with its use of HOV lanes for carpool traffic and buses. But this bridge was a massive overhaul, and as the project report says, because it's 10 lanes, it'll surely reduce congestion, right? we'll get back to that later.
You know, the only thing crazier than this bridge being proposed is the fact that it actually started construction. They broke ground on April 5th, 2017, with an estimated completion date of 2022. Even as a kid, I can distinctly remember when they started piling up all this sand along the highway, and also these huge metal pipe things that are still here for some reason.
So what gives? Obviously, we're past 2022, and I don't see any bridge here. So what happened? Politics. It was politics. As soon as this project started construction, it was ultimately scrapped. There's actually a surprising amount of controversy surrounding this bridge that I really don't have the time to get into, but the result of it was a new BC Premier being elected, that being NDP's John Horgan, who sent it all back to the drawing board. Like I said, recurring theme in this topic.
And that finally brings us to today, with a brand new project that's actually well underway. The Fraser River Tunnel Project is the hot new attempt to finally get rid of the George Massey, and an 8-lane tunnel is the plan to get it done. But this isn't just an increase in lanes, no, this is an upgrade for every mode of transportation over this crossing. 2 of the 8 lanes of the tunnel will be bus-only lanes, so there's really only 6 lanes for regular vehicle traffic. This means that rush hour will still have the same amount of travel lanes in each desired direction, although driving the opposite direction will not be nearly as miserable. Another huge benefit of the project is the inclusion of a large multi-use path for those who choose to walk or bike through the tunnel. As it is right now, there's actually no option for people looking to walk or cycle through the George Massey directly. There is a free bicycle shuttle that comes every 30 minutes to take you from one end to the other, but it only runs at peak hours and it only has a capacity for 8 bikes.
Here's a way to visualize what this new tunnel will look like. What you see here is a 3D printed small-scale version of one of the 6 tunnel segments used to create the new tunnel, albeit much shorter. At either end, you can see the large spaces for 4 lanes headed northbound and southbound respectively. Right here in the center at the bottom is the new cyclist and pedestrian space, and right above it is a utilities area. But that's the core of the project. It is really hard to understate just how spectacular this new tunnel will be, simply from an engineering standpoint. Now, that's not my area of expertise, but you know whose it is?
Meet Donald Trapp, the project director of the Fraser River Tunnel Project. He's had experience as a project director in the past, but he's also a civil engineer.
Well, when I attended one of the open houses hosted for the Fraser River Tunnel Project, I got the opportunity to sit down with Donald Trapp and talk to him about the project. And the first thing that impressed me was the way this tunnel is going to be built.
Think of large concrete tunnel elements, kind of boxes, sealed at the end. They float, which is incredible. Our elements will be 60,000 tons, dredge the river, and then carefully controlled, position these elements using tugs, winches, and anchors, and sinking individual tunnel elements to 25 millimeter accuracy 6 times, creating your tunnel.
Now, you may once again be sensing some deja vu in this video because, well, that's exactly how the original Massey Tunnel was built. It's a classic case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but advancements in technology over time will ultimately make the process much less stressful.
One major concern for people who hear about this project for the first time is how the construction will affect their daily commute through the tunnel, and, well, there's some good news on that front.
So we know the importance of maintaining mobility of transportation. The existing tunnel will stay operational. The new tunnel is approximately 40 meters upstream, and it's essentially off alignment. So you basically will maintain current traffic through the existing tunnel while the new tunnel is being constructed.
And this is exactly what was done when the Portman Bridge was replaced and can currently be seen with the Patella Bridge replacement as well. As all of this goes on, traffic will flow as usual with the construction just out of the way.
And we don't have to wait too long to see this unfold. If all goes according to plan, construction should be starting in 2026, with the tunnel ultimately being completed by 2030. After that point, the decommissioning process for the Massey Tunnel will begin.
But this is a good time to mention that the Fraser River Tunnel Project is just one piece of a greater project called the Highway 99 Tunnel Program.
While this here is all that's going on with the Fraser River Tunnel Project, this is the entire scope of the Highway 99 Tunnel Program. Let's start from the north, shall we? It all started with the Bridgeport Road bus connection. The star of this upgrade is the brand new transit-only accessway onto Highway 99 headed southbound. Previously, buses headed southbound had to deal with this truly awful set of intersections at Great Canadian Way, Bridgeport Road, and Sea Island Way just to get back onto the highway. Now they only have to deal with one of these awful intersections, luckily the better of the two. Buses now get to turn back onto Bridgeport Road where they access this new connection point.
It's a completely seamless connection that can speed up travel times immensely during rush hour, and while a bit more bus priority along Bridgeport Road would make this completely flawless, it's hard to complain when this new intersection is a nearly instantaneous green light for buses.
There were also these brand new pedestrian and cycling routes added here as well, which help get to the multi-use pathway to Bridgeport Station just around the block. Moving south, we get to the Steveston Interchange Project, a brand new 5-lane overpass at the eastern end of Steveston Highway to replace the old 2-lane one. For buses headed northbound to Bridgeport, there will be a new in-lane bus stop, similar to the one found along the R6 Rapid Bus at 72nd and Scott Road in Surrey. Currently, buses have to weave in and out between all the cars getting off here, changing lanes erratically. This aims to streamline that process. Good quality sidewalks and fully separated bike lanes will also be built along either side of the new interchange. This is a huge upgrade from the whole lot of not that exists there right now. Oh, hold on, let me just, here we go, and perfect. Although for some reason, it looks like these great pedestrian measures will have to deal with some really bad slip lanes, but I'll get back to that. The new Steveston Interchange is also the start of the new pedestrian and cycling connection in and around the Fraser River Tunnel. As for how you actually get in the tunnel, I'll let the project director explain.
So the access that we have to the center of the tunnel, essentially it's a switchback. So you come out of the tunnel, and then there'll be a switchback within the road, and then you have a T on top, so you'll be able to access both sides of the highway into the center of the tunnel, tying into existing transportation networks in both Steveston and the Delta side, including Dease Island Park.
That T element he mentions has two very different uses at either end of the tunnel. At the Richmond side, one way will take you towards Steveston Interchange and the other towards a newly rerouted Rice Mill Road.
On the Delta side, however, the T is located farther along after you get out of the median of the highway. If you turn right, you'll have immediate access to the many trails of Dease Island, which I might add is a beautiful park. If you continue headed straight along the T, you'll actually start to ride along the old Highway 99 right-of-way, including the old bridge over the Dease Slough. At the other end, you'll reach this little pedestrian roundabout for some reason, where the path splits headed under the overpass to the north to connect to the Millennium Trail and also onwards south towards Ladner. Continuing farther south, we reach the upgrades to the Highway 17A off-ramp.
Now recently, you may have seen a lot of work going on here, but don't be fooled. That was just repairs being done after a semi-truck decided to run into it. Happened farther along the way as well. And by the looks of it, these truckers seem just as eager to get this tunnel replaced as us.
This is another area where transit priority is being added, with a sort of queue jump to give buses a head start into the tunnel. Although you'd think it'd just be faster to run the buses regularly on the highway instead of having to do this weird diversion.
There's no bus stop here like you have over at Steveston Interchange, so I'm not really sure why the buses have to detour. They honestly could just stay on this separated part of highway right over here.
As of right now, this acts as a bus queue jump that is especially useful in rush hour, but once the new tunnel is implemented with bus lanes all the way through, well, there won't be any need for a queue jump anymore.
Apparently there are plans to implement a stop here in the future, which would partially explain why this diversion is here, but even still, a bus stop like you see over at Steveston Interchange headed southbound would save buses much more time than needing to pull off all this way. But speaking of bus lanes, let's check out the last piece of the program.
Between Highway 17A and Ladner Trunk Road at Matthews Exchange, brand new bus-on-shoulder lanes have been introduced. These are a game changer. Nothing makes a bus more appealing than seeing it fly past you at the peak of rush hour, and this does exactly that. It's no surprise this goes hand in hand with the bus lanes in the new tunnel. Now, nearly all of Delta will have full bus priority, and I can only hope the rest of this stretch of Highway 99 can get bus lanes here as well. It currently has them for most of the northbound stretch except for this little gap here, but weirdly enough, the southbound side is missing them completely. The brand new bus lanes in Delta alone can save transit riders up to 10 minutes on their trip. Imagine how much time could be saved if they had them the whole way. There isn't really much to add besides that. Richmond has them almost the whole way except for this little stretch going south where there's an HOV lane for some reason, and the same is seen in Delta leading up to the 17A interchange. Those should both be easy things to fix.
Well, that's the full scope of the program. All in all, it's a lot of necessary additions to a vital transportation corridor for Metro Vancouver, and a lot of work has been done to bring it all to reality.
The Bridgeport Road bus connection, Highway 17 off-ramp, and Highway 99 bus and shoulder lanes in Delta have all been completed already, and the new Steveston Highway interchange is well under construction with an estimated completion date of 2025. After that, all that will remain is the tunnel itself.
Well, all of this is fine and wonderful, but this is no perfect project. Every project will have its shortcomings, and there are a few here that I would like to highlight. Let's bring it back to the new Steveston interchange.
I mentioned earlier that the new additions for active transportation are a great thing to see here and certainly cannot go unmentioned, but there's one major thing holding them back from greatness. These slip lanes. Bit of context. This is a slip lane. It's a right turn lane that often features a yield sign for any vehicles turning right. This creates a pedestrian island in between the right turn lane and general traffic. In this case, it serves as the access point for the highway on-ramp.
The goal of slip lanes is to allow cars to turn right without needing to slow down too much. Now, let's think for a second why this might not be a great idea when dealing with a dedicated pedestrian and cycleway. Slip lanes are notoriously dangerous. The main thing drivers are thinking when entering one is to look for oncoming cars in the direction they are hoping to turn. They are seldom looking for anyone outside of a moving vehicle.
Richmond is particularly bad with slip lanes. You see them all over the city, even in new neighborhoods. The majority of new road projects around Metro Vancouver have been aiming to eliminate this style of street design whenever possible. Take the Vancouver SFU cycling connection, for example, with several instances of slip lanes being replaced with safe measures for pedestrians, often by changing the turning radius for vehicles so that they need to turn slower. Banning right turns on red lights is a final step that can make these intersections as safe as possible, though that's a whole other issue that I won't get into here. Now I'm highlighting the Steveston interchange for this issue, but it's also seen in the Highway 17A interchange upgrades too. This safe pathway for cyclists doesn't seem all too safe.
Little missteps like these really hold back what would otherwise be a perfect pedestrian and cycling experience. And while yes, it is a huge step up from what is here now, it is still a massive shame that this is a part of the final plan. Now, let's head back to the tunnel.
The new tunnel certainly has a lot going for it, but I've really gotta know, what was the thought process behind putting the pedestrian and cycleway in the middle of a highway?
The goal of a AAA cycling network is for it to be accessible for everyone. And while a dedicated, separated, paved multi-use pathway certainly appears to check all of those boxes, there's a less apparent hurdle that comes alongside general comfortability riding in certain areas. And many casual cyclists, as well as just pedestrians, tend to avoid putting themselves in uncomfortable situations.
The first example I can think of is the noise factor. Cars are loud, trucks are loud, and yes, buses are also loud. So it's undeniable that there will be a lot of noise when entering and exiting the tunnel alongside vehicles going 80 kilometers an hour and above.
Take it from the guy who's been filming right next to the highway for an hour and a half now. It isn't exactly a blast. And when I don't have a noise isolating microphone on, it sounds like this. I don't even know if you can hear me at this point. I could just be talking to nobody.
Another aspect to consider is heat. Roadways get hot, especially on sunny summer days, and asphalt absorbs a lot of heat. At the same time, those vehicle emissions also contribute to the heat of the air.
And if you're in the middle of a freeway experiencing the peak of the heat island effect, well, it isn't just unpleasant, it can be downright dangerous.
And I'm not saying to install shade canopies all along here or something. Simply moving the pathway closer to the existing trees will give the opportunity for natural shade. Who knows, maybe we can even plant some more trees along the path as well.
Final point.
Air quality. Look, we can talk about how the shift to electric vehicles has been making this slightly less of an issue, but there are still combustion engine vehicles on the highway. It's just the way it is. And because of this fact, if you're walking or riding in the middle of 8 lanes of high-speed traffic, you are going to be directly exposed to all of the emissions around you.
This wouldn't be nearly as big of an issue if the pathway was located on the side of the tunnel instead of right in the middle. In this case, you also wouldn't need to take the time to cross over the tunnel, perform the switchback to get in, and then do the opposite when you get out on the other side. You could just enter and exit like everybody else using the tunnel.
Let's say we move the multi-use pathway to the west side of the tunnel. For starters, nothing would change along River Road. The connection to the Dees Island trails might need to be moved to keep the grade the same, not being too steep, but you would have much more room to work with getting in and out of the tunnel without needing to turn around halfway. And on the Richmond side, it's even better. By moving the pathway to the west side, you avoid needing to build this overpass at all. This way you can exit directly to the west side of Steveston Exchange. You know, where 99% of the people using it are coming from. Oh, and you can also keep an easy connection to Rice Mill Road.
If these changes were incorporated, the experience for users of active transportation would be significantly improved. You wouldn't have to go through the entirety of Steveston Interchange just to get in and out of the tunnel, and thus avoiding using those nasty slip lanes, which would make it not only a much safer experience, but a faster one as well. And this isn't some far-fetched idea either. This was actually originally the plan. Granted, it was on the east side, but both the tunnel and the bridge would have allocated space for this pathway, and the revised bridge would have had one at either side. I have no idea if this is still able to be changed or if the design is final, but if the team ends up seeing this, I hope this is at least taken into consideration.
Now I'd like to quickly tackle a much broader question. Should we even be doing this? I've spent most of this video pretty much saying that the best parts of this project is everything it does for folks not using cars, so Is it worth spending all this money for this massive project if there's ultimately no benefit for its primary user?
Well, it's complicated. While yes, every other mode of transportation is getting a massive benefit from this project, that isn't to say there's no benefit for cars either.
When traveling through the tunnel at rush hour, you will have 3 travel lanes. This will stay the same for the new tunnel. But if you're trying to go in the opposite direction of counterflow, well, now you only have 1 lane. This winds up creating a disgusting bottleneck for no matter which direction you are traveling to. If you're traveling southbound against rush hour, you're going from 3 lanes down to 1. And if you're traveling northbound, that's 5 lanes down to 1 lane. This should not be as big of an issue when the new tunnel opens, with both directions having an equal number of lanes. But this is a big issue for some people, saying that it's irresponsible to spend so much money on a project that isn't future-proofed with additional travel lanes. Their solution being that the tunnel should be wider, or at least have the bus lane be an HOV lane.
And I'll be honest, I used to think the same way. When I first saw the bus lanes going in along Highway 99, I thought it was a huge missed opportunity that they weren't HOV lanes, something that I could use if I needed to.
But since then, I've learned how roads can be designed to move greater amounts of people, and transit, when compared to typical vehicle traffic, is remarkably more efficient.
When it comes to actually moving people, and not just cars, you'll find that a single car lane with frequent buses can carry between 1,000 and 2,800 people per hour. But a single dedicated rapid transit lane can carry double, even triple the amount of people in some cases.
This means that having that additional bus lane go through the tunnel is the equivalent of having a total of 5 or 6 car lanes in each direction, all without needing to balloon the cost of this project out of control. And that's without even mentioning the pathway in the middle. So it isn't some world-ending decision to maintain the same number of peak direction car lanes through this tunnel, because the travel capacity will still be greatly improved.
And this is a bit of a common trend we're seeing with our crossing replacements. The Patella Bridge replacement is also only opening with 4 lanes, the same number as the original bridge. Granted, it is being built with the ability to be expanded into 6 lanes, but that might not be necessary for a while given the state of SkyTrain and other transit projects in the area. However, this brings us to another trend in highway expansion projects: moving the bottleneck.
Picture this. You eliminate the current bottleneck at the George Massey Tunnel by widening it from 4 lanes to 8. You now have a consistent number of lanes moving throughout Richmond. But wait, the Oak Street Bridge is still only 4 lanes. Oh, but some people may have turned off to head to the Knight Street Bridge. But now you're adding the recently expanded capacity of the 7-lane Alex Fraser Bridge into the picture, and yeah, we've got a problem. With traffic still likely to increase along this crossing, we still have the potential to run into a disastrous situation. It may seem like we're eliminating the bottleneck at the George Massey Tunnel, but in reality, the likely outcome is that the bottleneck will simply move, in this case to the Oak Street and Knight Street bridges.
And we've seen this before in our region. A critique politicians had of the replacement for the Portman Bridge that would fix traffic congestion was that it will just move the bottleneck into Burnaby, and that's exactly what happened. Highway widening projects have the persistent issue of induced demand, the idea that more people will see this upgraded crossing as a better commuting decision, quickly reintroducing the familiar congestion in the first place.
At any time of day now, people will have 3 travel lanes to go north or south through this crossing instead of 2, so it's fair to assume that more people will be attracted to the Massey crossing regularly throughout the day. The question is, where are these people going? If they're going to other crossings, then are we going to have to spend billions widening all of those as well? That isn't sustainable.
The likely assumption here is that the increased volumes of traffic will be turning off into Richmond, not continuing all the way through to other crossings. And while that may be true, that's not a good thing either.
Anyone who spent any amount of time in Richmond knows that A, it kinda sucks to walk there,
This kinda sucks.
and B, it sucks even more to drive there. This is footage of central Richmond at just about 8 p.m. on a Thursday. How is traffic still this bad when we should be well past rush hour? We're assuming the increased volumes of traffic from the tunnel will enter Richmond City Center when it already looks like this? How can we manage this? We can't be leveling blocks for parking or building towers of parkades. There has to be other options.
Okay, I feel like I've been complaining for too long. Let's end this off on a better note. All of that brings us to where we are now, building high-quality, reliable infrastructure for those other modes of transportation, the more efficient ones that I spoke of before.
Richmond has a long way to go in this battle, but the signs of change are there, and it's our job to keep pushing for them and hold their council accountable when this may be overlooked. Delta has a big fight ahead as well, but an easy place to start is with a dedicated cycleway from Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal to the new tunnel, connecting the River Road path to Arthur Road and all the way to the Ferry Terminal Causeway. To some Delta residents, this may just seem like a path in the middle of nowhere, but this is a route that is taken far more often than you may expect. In fact, it's so popular that there's a seasonal dedicated bike bus from Bridgeport Station to the ferry terminal. If you've got to start somewhere, why not there?
Ultimately, while the Fraser River Tunnel Project has its flaws, I still believe it is a project that should happen. In my eyes, the overall benefits outweigh the costs, and that isn't to say all the problems are permanent either. But this is bigger than just a tunnel. It's 2 overpasses, a transitway, and several kilometers of bus lanes, of course, but it's also a test of the infrastructure in these 2 cities. We know we have issues with traffic, and we know we have an increasing population, so we're going to have to be careful not to gridlock ourselves as our region continues growing. It's not about expanding lanes. It's about creating a shift in the modal share, the method in which people choose to get around. We've got a long ways to go, but this is a notorious point of conflict in our network, which means it's a good place to start. I can personally say I do a little bit of everything. I walk, bike, drive, and take transit, usually just to get to wherever I need to be in the fastest way possible. And this isn't a unique way of thinking. So when we design our future projects, let's make sure that everyone gets to where they need to be quickly, no matter the way they choose to do it. Because regardless of the way you get around, it should not be a stretch to say that every method of transportation should be efficient, accessible, and reliable at a similar level. That is what I believe is the true benefit of the Fraser River Tunnel Project. Thank you. I wonder what the new tunnel will be called when it ends up opening. The Dees Island Tunnel? The George Massey 2? The Greater Discussions Tunnel? Ooh, that has a good ring to it.